Welcome back, Superhuman. Today I'm coming to you bright and early in Australian time, but my guest is the fabulous Ellen Elizabeth, who's coming to us from Colorado Springs. She is an infertility warrior and recovery advocate who uses her skills as an author and sober mother of twins to coach women struggling with feelings of shame and inadequacy. These mothers feel powerless to quit drinking or are unable to bring a child into the world. Through radical honesty and recovery principles, Ellen inspires mums and their partners in all forms to define who they want to be and transform their demons into dreams. She's been featured in publications such as Authority Magazine, Collective World, and Recovery Today magazine, as well as dozens of other podcasts. So I'm so honored to have you here today. Thank you for being here.
Of course. Thanks so much for having me. I can't wait to chat with you.
Yes. And the other thing I was about to say is you have a family of 5, including the fur baby, the dog.
Can't forget the fur baby.
But yes. So you're an infertility warrior and recovery advocate.
Yes. So basically, I kind of came up with the term infertility warrior. I don't know if it's a thing or not, but I battled it and overcame. My husband and I had issues conceiving together. It seemed we were not compatible. It was simply diagnosed as unexplained infertility, but we went through all of the possible things we could and then ended up doing IVF, which brought us our twin babies. So they're now 3.5, so not so much babies anymore. Yep. But it was all intertwined with my battle with addiction, which is where the recovery advocate comes from. I just like to be someone who advocates for the recovery community, speaks out, tells my story. I feel that being very vulnerable and open could possibly help save someone's life. So I try to be as honest as possible.
100%. And it's so invaluable for people to have the courage to share their story because it's not easy. It's certainly not an easy task. So which came first? I'm assuming the alcohol and that being a problem obviously was first.
Correct. So my addiction actually started out with a bang and I went straight to hard drugs and did that before I even really started drinking. So I did those for about 3.5 years and it was all within a very toxic relationship. So he basically introduced me to everything. And I didn't realize when we met that he was actually already an addict and using. So I think once we were together for several months, he thought, hey, now's a good time to kind of show her what it is so that we can do it together. Mm-hmm. And that was just a really downward spiral. It was right during my college years. So I didn't have a normal college life, so to speak, because I was just following him around doing drugs and not really making friends at school and doing things like that. So once I finally got the courage to break up with him and I was able to quit the drugs, but then that's when I started drinking. So that started around the age of 21. So the drugs were like 18 to 21 and then 21 to 32 was drinking. And we started trying our family around 29, I want to say, when I was 29.
Yeah. So you're still with your partner now?
Yes. So we have been married 7 years, but together 13. Wow. And so he's seen me at my worst. We also met when we were both in our mid-20s. So, it was normal to go out a lot, have drinks a lot. Mm-hmm. We definitely partied together. He simply was the one who could stop. So he's what we call normie, which mm-hmm. means he can have one beer and be done, which us alcoholics just don't understand that. And so he, it's been quite the journey to go through, like drinking together and then him encouraging me to stop and me not being able to, and then helping find a rehab for me to go to, and then learning who I am now that I'm sober. So it's been quite the journey for our relationship, but overall it's much better now that I'm not drinking.
So how long has it been now since?
I haven't had a drink for 5.5 years.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
So obviously your husband now is not the toxic relationship you first started with when you were
Correct.
18.
Yes.
Just to reiterate that.
Yes, thank you.
I mean, they're impressionable years. I think the similar partner I was with when I was 18 wasn't the best relationship either. So you're in an impressionable time to be
Right.
introduced to things like that are not, valuable to our college years or in our lives in general. So glad to hear that ended.
Me too.
Yeah. So how did you, because I mean, once you're in the midst of all that, it gets pretty hazy to realize it's time to go, when you're deep in the pit of it.
It definitely was a denial, years of denial. I knew when I first started drinking, I thought it was pretty normal and thought most 21-year-olds were going out all the time and getting drunk every night. And, I surrounded myself with those types of people. So it did look normal because, I didn't want to hang out with sober people. I wanted to go drink with people. And once I progressed a little more, it got to where I was hiding it. Even when I lived by myself, I hid some in a little cupboard so that if people came over, I could have a little more than they were, without them knowing. And once I moved in with my now husband was when the hiding really started, because then, there's someone there all the time. And my tolerance was astronomically higher than most people. So I always needed a little pre-party by myself in the closet, where I was hiding everything. And around those times, I would sneak away to the closet and then go to the bathroom to wash my mouth out with Listerine. So, it wasn't smelly or whatever. And I would just look into the mirror and say in my head, I'm pretty sure this isn't normal. You have a drinking problem. You're probably going to have to stop. But then I would just shrug it off and be like, nope, I can't live without it. I don't even know how to do that. This is what I need to do. And that happened for years. And, even at that time, there were negative things happening. I was starting to become very angry instead of the funny, giggly drunk. I was now the rage, angry drunk, trying to get in fights, knocking doors down with my body, just not normal things at all. And those, I just was like, well, I overdid it last night. Sorry, I'll try not to do it again. And then it got to the point where my husband would be like, can you try to take it easy tonight? We're going to be in front of some people and I don't want to be embarrassed. And I'd always try and it never worked. So I just never knew when to stop once I started. So, it was years leading up to the actual day that I decided it was enough.
There's a lot there, but I feel like that gradual build up, of trying to keep it a secret and trying to, it's the shame that you would have felt in having to do everything in private behind closed doors without people knowing. And then that gradual decline in your self-worth in understandably looking back now, you could probably see that you just were, because you weren't giggling and it wasn't fun anymore because you knew it was a problem.
Right.
Do you agree?
It was like, once you try to control it and you can't, it's just becomes like an obsession and we try anything to make it work. It's like, I tried to not mix tequila with vodka. If I was drinking vodka, I wouldn't have red wine, I'd have white wine, and then, no beers before, and try not to do this and that. And it's just like you're spending your whole life trying to make this balance that's never going to work, because no matter what, we can't put it down when we want to. And when I started my recovery journey, someone told me, you just have to put as much time and effort into your sobriety as you did into your addiction. And I was like, well, okay. So I obsessed about drinking all day long. And then I would find places to hide it. I'd spend hours going to different liquor stores so they wouldn't think I had a problem. And I'd drive out of the way to go there, and I'd hide it in this water bottle and I'd throw it away here. And so it's like,
Yeah.
I should spend all my time working on sobriety, because that's what I did when I was drinking.
Yeah. Wow. Just thinking about like how, if you put that channeled all that effort into something of value, like
Exactly.
how much you could have achieved.
Right. It's like a full-time job trying to keep your secret.
Literally. And it's definitely not an easy one, so it's not rewarding, and it slowly did devalue your worth in yourself and your self-esteem and everything like that.
Absolutely.
I think tell me if I'm wrong, but having your partner sort of bring it to your attention a little bit more might have been helpful. Like it would have been like, hey, I like, because when you're in a loving relationship, it's like they start to see that you're not treating yourself the best, and they want better for you.
Yes, it definitely planted a seed. At the same time, I was actively so deep in the addiction that it also pissed me off. And, I was still in denial about it. So when he would say things like, try to take it easy tonight, I just felt controlled, and I'd be like, well, I'm going to retaliate, and show him that I can do it. But then, it would just be like, well, I showed him that I can't do it, and I embarrassed him again. So it was like that vicious cycle where you're just so ashamed and so embarrassed and hate yourself. But then you're like, well, I need this to numb all those feelings and feel better about myself. But then it just starts over.
Yeah. So that pivotal last moment for you, which made you go to rehab, is that what?
Yes, I did.
Was that like, was there something that happened that was just like, okay, that's it, enough?
There were several things leading up to it. A lot of it was the infertility stuff.
Okay.
I did, we'd been doing years of treatments, and I'd never been able to quit. So I was drinking through all the treatments.
I see.
I was drinking through all the weeks that they call it the 2-week wait, where you're waiting to find out if the treatment worked. And pretty much every time we did a treatment, I was just terrified because I wanted it so bad, but I knew I couldn't quit. And I thought, even if I got pregnant, will I even be able to stop? Like, would I just try to have one shooter every night instead of 6? Or, how would I survive without it? And then how would this baby be healthy? So I was just so scared that I would have to give it up. So that was in the back of my mind the whole time. And then there was an incident where I drove in a blackout and called my husband. I have no memory of any of it, but he found me passed out in a parking lot with the car running and the door open and liquor bottles in the car.
Oh,
so
wow.
just really scary. And he still has, PTSD a little bit from all that. And then, our relationship was just getting worse and worse. And the last week I drank was the first time I actually brought it into my office with me. So I'd had this job for several years and took it very seriously, and was always, 5 to 10 was my time to drink, not like during the day. So I was very straight laced at work, and nobody figured I had an issue. And until the last week of drinking, I needed it at 6 a.m. to feel better, because I was still basically drunk. And I was just wasted at lunchtime at work, and knew I couldn't talk, knew I couldn't walk, like could easily have been fired. And again, I called my husband to the rescue, and he was like, what, what? It's 12 o'clock, you're at work. What's going on? And I was like, I just really need you to come get me, because they're going to find out. And so he came and picked me up, and I passed out in the car. And when I woke up, he and my parents had looked for rehab places.
Yeah. Wow.
All new for so long that it was, they just knew I liked to drink a lot. My husband knew the most of it because he lived with me. But it was just seeing me like that and realizing it just had come to a place where I couldn't get out of it myself.
Absolutely. Well, thank goodness you had loving support around you.
Exactly. I know not everyone has that, and it's so much harder. I know that, even people in the rehab were saying, my wife was doing cocaine with me the day I came in here, and, she's going to keep doing it. And there's not the support there, when you have a loved one who's still like actively using right when you get out of rehab. That's generally a huge trigger. So it was great that my family was super supportive. They removed alcohol from the house and didn't drink in front of me. And so, yeah, it's been so helpful just having the support system.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing all that, Ellen. I know it's not easy, to share all that. It's so, to having lived through that and gone through that, that's why it's so important that to share it and for us to hear it, because it doesn't matter what form of addiction you might be going through. Like if you have to hide it, it's generally not okay. Like your instincts are telling you if you're hiding it, it's not something to be proud about. And unfortunately, alcohol sort of falls under that thing where it's so readily available, it's so socially acceptable. It's actually weird if you don't drink. So I quit drinking in 2018. It was kind of forced upon me because I had an anaphylactic reaction to food, and it sort of was part of my journey in trying to restore my body's health. So I decided I was going to quit alcohol, and people just thought it was the most bizarre thing. And I was just like,
I know.
What do you mean? Like, I've drank plenty in my life. Like, I think I'll be right for a while.
Right. I know it's so crazy that you have to justify not drinking. And I always say, like, when I quit drugs, nobody was like, hey, why didn't you smoke crack this morning? Like, are you okay? Is there something wrong with you? But it's like, oh my God, you're not drinking. Are you sick? Are you pregnant? What's wrong? And it's just absolutely crazy to me. So most people that know me by now, I'm pretty open about my addiction and sobriety, but at the beginning, it was just like, oh my God, what do I say? People are so weird, and people are still so uncomfortable around me. They have no idea how to interact with me because I'm not drunk. And there's just certain places I don't even go anymore because I know that they just can't handle it.
Yeah. It's sad that that's a reality.
I know, it really is.
But it truly is.
So you've probably felt it too, or experienced it a lot, especially 2018. That's quite a few years, which is amazing.
Yeah, it was 4 years I didn't touch alcohol at all. And then, I got to that point where I was in a position where I could try something if I wanted to. And it's for the pure appreciation of like a good glass of wine or something like that. But my tolerance was so extreme that like literally I would have a sip and I'm like, ooh, okay, that's
I'm good. That was great.
Yeah. So it's having that control to choose. And thankfully over that period of time, people have stopped pressuring me into just having some. And I'm like, no, I don't want any. Thank you. And the benefits out of it was, well, I got to experience that, that stigma around it. And two, I heightened my other senses in smell and things like that. So I was still choosing the wine for people at dinner, but I wasn't drinking it.
Right.
So
I know, it's so interesting. My husband will come home and I'll be like, how was your beer? And he's like, what? And I was like, well, I can smell it. Well, I'm not judging you. I was just asking how your beer was because I can smell it from like 10 feet away.
Yeah, it's definitely heightened, isn't it? Once you don't have it. So
yeah, it's so interesting.
So it was interesting as well because I didn't realize that there was a crossover between your you're trying to have babies, or maybe you obviously weren't planning to have twins.
Yeah.
You were trying to get pregnant, but at the same time, you were still in that transition, or not even transition at that time. You were still trying to quit and trying to have a baby. So I'm assuming once you started to, go through the rehab process, that's when you tried again?
Yes. So, like I said, we've been trying probably a year and a half as I was still actively drinking. And I just know, obviously, I believe like the universe has everything planned according to how it's supposed to work out. And so the universe knew like she should not be pregnant right now.
Yeah.
So that's a blessing for sure. And after rehab, I stayed sober, for 6 months, 8 months, 9 months. And it was close to a year when we did start trying again. And, I told all the doctors that, this is what I've been through. And none of them were like, well, you probably infertile because you were drinking so much. Like no one said that. They just said, well, that it's good you stopped pretty much. So it was nice because sometimes some doctors aren't super, positive, and there's still a stigma even with doctors around alcoholism. But we did start trying again, and I was able to stay sober through all of it. And then, like I said, we did have to do IVF. So we took a few months off just to chill and not worry about anything before starting that process.
Yeah.
But it worked. So that worked the first time, which was nice because everything else had been a fail up till that. So it was a very exciting time. And to be completely honest, pregnancy was the time I wanted to drink the most since getting sober. I was so just the hormones and how I felt so awful and was cranky and sleepy. I could sleep for like 16 hours. And I just felt so triggered with all of it that was really the hardest time for me to be sober, which is weird to most people. They would be like, well, you're pregnant. Why would you even think about drinking? And it's like, well, I'm an addict, so that's what I do. But yeah, so that was really hard. And then
was it the element of feeling better, isn't it? Like that exactly. Kind of your mind is telling you that you'll feel better if you drink.
Right. Yes. And you won't feel this way anymore. Yeah. Everything will be better. So yep, I was able, I got through that, and my son so we have boy girl twins. My son was born with a birth defect that he would have aspirated and died right away if he hadn't had surgery. So it was a very intense beginning of his life, which was also incredibly stressful. But, throughout all those, I mean, I was doing like AA meetings regularly and working a program regularly. But I think if I hadn't been doing that, it would have been much easier to go get something. And like you said, alcohol is absolutely on every corner, which I always say, I think it was easier for me to quit the drugs just because I got rid of that boyfriend and cut everything off with those friends. And it's not like there's drug store like that type of drugstore everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. You can't just go to the corner store and get some cocaine or something like that.
Yeah.
But yet sugar is on every corner, and you can.
I know. Yeah. And I definitely have a sugar addiction now, which is totally cliche for alcoholics because there's just so much sugar in the alcohol. But yeah, I'm like, well, I do eat too much sugar for sure. But.
Well, one step at a time.
Exactly.
So what a blessing you got twins in.
I know.
So once all was done, I mean, not done, but like, you've gone through that process. You were in a better place. You were blessed with two beautiful babies, one of each, which is wonderful. And yeah, and you were able to, go through all of the hard emotions and the mind games of pregnancy.
And not drink, which to me it's so I've heard some women who struggle with addiction or alcoholism To me, they're both the same, but,
Yeah.
and they're able to quit drinking when they're pregnant. And I'm just like, that's amazing. But then they start again, as soon as their baby is
Yes.
born. But to me, that wasn't even, it was unimaginable to even be able to think of doing it for, you know, 9 months, let alone one day. So it's just so interesting how it affects everyone so differently. And, some people can quit for years and then start up again. And it's still just back to where it was, being, progressively worse and worse. And then some feel like they can have one or two and seem to stick with that. So it's just an interesting disease to me.
Mm, yeah. So being someone who is now openly sharing their story and writing about it, which is exciting, um, what are those principles that you like to speak about to sort of help guide perhaps other people on their journey through something as hard as what you've gone through?
My first thing is always to tell people that it's okay, you're not alone, because when you're in all of those feelings and all of the shame and self-hatred, you think, you know, no one else is going through this. I'm all alone in this. And, there was one day when I was at work and I was so hungover and I was walking to the bathroom and I was like, I guarantee no one in this building is hungover right now and dreaming about booze. But there could have been like 6 people that were going through the same thing. We just, it's not talked about. So just being able to know you're not alone and then asking for help is the most important, because there are so many people out there willing to help. There's so many. I've found tons of online communities that help with recovery that I wouldn't have even known about. And there's not just one way to recover. It's not like you have to do AA and that's the only way that works. There's tons of things you can do. And so it's really just the community is so important, the recovery community, or if it's something different that's not recovery related, it's parenting issues, or like I went through infertility, or just, anxiety, depression. There's just so many people struggling with the same thing, that it's just knowing you're not alone and knowing there's a community out there that understands you.
Yeah. I think fortunately in this day and age, it is more spoken about, and in both the addiction side of things and also in infertility.
Mhm.
So how do you speak to other couples who are, going through their difficulties, in how do you speak to them?
It depends, because every couple goes through things differently. So I never experienced miscarriages or, stillbirths or any things like that. I just experienced failed procedures. So you kind of have to know exactly what they've been through to know how to talk to them. But again, just letting them know there's not alone. If they need to speak to a grief type counselor, if they have experienced lots of loss like that, knowing where to point them in the right direction, and then just, sharing what I went through. And with infertility, it's so hard because it's like you want to give up, but you don't, because you really want a family. So just the mindset that, you can keep going. There are other options, even if it's not, you can adopt, you can have a surrogate, you can get donor sperm and eggs. And it just depends what point of their journey they're on, because some people aren't even at the point where they're thinking of adoption, or
Mm-hmm.
anything like that. They just want it to be the husbands and the wives mixed together, and that's how it's going to be. So it depends where they are in their journey of it.
Yeah. Well, what was the point for you and your husband then, that, after trying and not being successful, what was that, um, you know, encouragement to try once more, to try again?
So I think for us, it was just, part of me is like, why did the doctor keep me on the same med for like 8 months when obviously it wasn't working? But at the time, you're not thinking about that. You're just the next cycle starts then. So let's get moving.
Well, your hormones
and
are
then-
so all over the place as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it really takes the fun out of intimacy for sure. But we knew IVF would be the last thing that we tried, essentially. And we, knew we'd think of adoption if it didn't work, but that was the last actual thing we would go through together. So we just kind of like had a plan of, we'll do this for a little bit of time, and then we'll try this next step, and then we'll go to the next step. And again, it probably depends on the doc. Like, I feel like our doctors could have done a few things differently. And I also think just the medical field in general is kind of wonky in America. Definitely just, they, sucked our money out of us for sure. And that could have been part of their plan that we just didn't know about. But I definitely think we could have done fewer treatments and gotten to the IVF faster, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I've worked with women who've gone through quite horrid experiences, to be honest. And I'm thinking,
Right.
Why are they taking you through this route? Like, it doesn't even make logical sense to me.
Right. I completely agree. And I've met so many more like holistic type medicine healers, and now I'm doing a lot more Eastern medicine type things, which I didn't even think about doing. Like, this is all like within my sobriety. I'm learning about all this stuff and getting more spiritual and all those things. And I'm like, man, I wish I kind of had this in my brain as an option back then. But it's just kind of pushed on you here. Like, we're the doctors, this is what you do,
Yeah.
That's what we believe will help. So
yeah, follow the traditional path is
right, exactly.
usually what we're led to believe. But
I know.
and that's part of my health journey as well, is having gone through all of the traditional paths and not work and be told to live with it and deal with it. And that just doesn't vibe with me. So I'm a solution specialist. I like to find the solution to things, and don't tell me I can't, or actually tell me I can't, because then that only just
then it'll motivate you. Yeah,
pretty much.
I've had doctors. So I have an autoimmune disease that I just found about like a year ago, which could have contributed to infertility, but obviously not sure because no one ever tested me for it then. But I told this doctor, like, I want a referral to a specialist because I want to find the root cause and figure out like what we can work on to. And he was like, nope, there's no root cause. You just deal with it. And I was like, okay, so I'm not coming to you anymore. I'm gonna switch to a different doctor. But like, how is there not a root cause to an autoimmune disorder? It's just like blows my mind sometimes. And so, yeah, I'm like, no, I'll find someone else who can help. But still, the fact that an actual medical person told me that was blowing. So
yeah, that was a massive turning point for me. So with my anaphylactic reaction, it turned out to be an autoimmune, it's stemming from an autoimmune, let's say, base, a foundation. And so I had to find the resolution. So then the doctor who I went to see was like, oh no, it's fine. Like, MSG isn't a problem, and gluten isn't a problem, and all these things are, and I was like, you're an allergist doctor and you're telling people that it's okay. Like, have you read a paper recently? I was completely dumbfounded. And, and I actually even had a reaction on the table as they were doing testing on me. And he insinuated that I was being weak, to the pin pricking. And I'm like, I don't care about the pin pricking. I care about the fact that my whole body is convulsing, and you're not helping me at all. And so $500 later, I was leaving that office and I went, right, I need to go get some sort of certification so that I can actually give people better advice
Right.
than what this
Then
guy
the
is doing.
doctor. Yeah.
I just could not believe it. I was absolutely dumbfounded. But thankfully it led me on my journey and
Yeah.
to the book that I'm currently working on, actually. So it's interesting you brought
Cool.
that up, because it's just, it's like the universe is just, it's constantly affirming that that's what I need to do, because even what you just said, it's like people need to know that there are other routes to find the root cause of the problem and not just accept the status quo. So that's basically everything that I'm putting together into a format where it's like, all right, find your path and like work, find your solution. So thank you for affirming that for me.
I can't wait to read it when it comes out.
Yes, but let's talk about Split Ends, because this is your memoir that you're working on. It's coming out in the near future.
I hope it is. So I'm working right now to find a traditional publisher, but I'm giving myself a few more months to work on that. And if nothing comes of it, I'm self-publishing. So I'm super excited. I'm just ready for it to be out in the world. And, I started writing it around COVID, and I've always loved writing. I've always journaled. I've always been good at it. And it just came naturally, and it was very cathartic and healing. So, it was just not like it was easy, but it just came, like the actual words came easily, but actually writing it was like, oh my God, this is quite the process. So I had no idea what publishing a book was like. I thought, I'll write a book and it'll be published and everything will be great. And, I'm learning as I go that there's a lot that it entails. So I just know it'll resonate with a lot of people. And I hope it brings to light some hard issues that people don't like to talk about.
I'm just curious, because Split Ends actually really, intrigues me, but I don't want you to give away too much, but like that name, like that title.
Yeah. So it came, I had a few different titles, and I did some like journaling around it. And one of my biggest like anxiety disorders I have is called trichotillomania, which is hair pulling disorder. So I incorporated that into the book and basically related all of my, dark negative issues to like an actual split end. And, every time something bad would happen, another split would go into the hair or something like that. So it's once you start reading it, it all makes sense. That's where Split Ends came from, but it's all because of my hair pulling disorder that came to me.
I love it. I literally got goosebumps as you were saying that. So it's the right name.
Yes. Yay. Thank you.
Awesome. So this has been amazing connecting with you today.
You too.
A question that I ask everyone who is on the podcast is, what does summoning your superhuman mean to you?
For me, I was thinking of that when I saw the title. Being your most authentic self, I think. For me, I call my sobriety my superpower, because if I don't have it, then I don't have anything else. Like my family goes away, my kids, and everything I've been working for would be gone. And so to have that as a superpower is, just the most important power I have. So summoning your superhuman to me is actually being the authentic person, most importantly to yourself. Because if you don't self-love, self-care, do all those types of things, then you're never going to be that superhuman that you want to.
Definitely. It said, and when, as you were saying that, it's like Superman and his kryptonite, it's like
exactly.
you said, my superpower is my sobriety, and, without it, I lose everything. So it's just like how he loses all his powers. It's right. Exactly. Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Of course.
And thank you so much for your time today. I want to encourage everyone to connect with Ellen. She's at It's Ellen Elizabeth on her social channels, Facebook and Instagram, and also it's ellenelizabeth.com. So is there a a place where we can sort of pre-order or get on a waiting list to find out about when your book comes out?
Yes, absolutely. So if you sign up for my newsletter, so if you go to my website, it's ellenelizabeth.com, it'll prompt you to sign up for my email list. And that's where you can stay up to date with everything. And obviously I'll be promoting it on social media and all of that, but the first words will come out from my newsletter.
Fantastic. Well, I look forward to reading your book one day. And
Thank you.
yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Of course, it was awesome to talk with you.